Yo, 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 what's going on, people? It's your boy Boxing Lowdown here. Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome. Once again, we've got another banging episode for you. Episode number 30, should I say, of the Boxing Lowdown podcast. And as always, I'm delighted to be joined by you know who, my guy, my dad, the co-host, Mr. Controversial, Mr. Laurie from AFTV. What's going on, man?
Check out the head movement, man. A pound for pound head movement.
I'm sure it's today, or it was yesterday, 2 years ago, when Canelo Alvarez fought Danny Jacobs, actually, when he showed that head movement. You know that clip that gets thrown around a lot. Yeah, so funny you say that, actually.
But which fight are you talking about? Is that Canelo Alvarez or Alvarez Canelo?
For those that don't know, man, he's referring to Tom Saunders' interview this week, man. Hilarious.
And isn't it taking place on Santo de Mayo weekend? Listen, man, we need more Tom Saunders in our life, man. Seriously, man. That guy's become an overnight internet sensation. I'm glued to that guy, man. You know what I mean? He's just emerged out of nowhere as the real star in all of this. You know what I mean? So sure, yeah, Santo de Mayo, Alvarez Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders. And it's the way he's getting treated as well.
Listen, man, we got a lot to talk about. I can't wait to get onto that preview, actually. We're going to be talking about that today. A lot of topics to discuss today, man, as usual. You know how it is, man. For those of you that are on the live stream, please click the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and also leave your comments, man, as you guys do. Leave your comments. We'll be happy to answer them. Any questions that you have throughout the show, we'll get onto them, man. That's what we do here. And I'll do my best to read through all of the comments that come through. So big up to everybody in the chat. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Let's get ready, man. Let's get this show on the road. First of all, man, before we get into Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo, very disturbing news, man, over the last week or so. And that was regarding FELIX FELDEJO. Now,
gross, man.
For those that don't know, FELIX FELDEJO, you know, he was a amateur star for Puerto Rico. He competed in the Olympics, was signed as a professional, one of the hot prospects in the game, managed by Top Rank. Over the weekend, there was, for those that don't know, in Puerto Rico, there was a young lady that went missing, believed to have been the mistress or girlfriend of FELIX FELDEJO, and he was a married man. He is a married man, let's say. And then she went missing. And now FELIX FELDEJO has been charged with the murder. And the gruesome details of this actual case is really disturbing. What's your thoughts on this, man? Because this was very, very disturbing. Before I get your thoughts, let me go to Ian Hamilton. He's put here, hello, guys. Looking forward to this as usual. It's a Canelo week. Is Laurie going to have Canelo fans outside his house with pitchforks after this one? He might do. He might do, Ian, man. We're going to go in today. So let me get Laurie's thoughts, first of all, on this whole FELIX FELDEJO thing, man. Very disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, we started off this particular show on a light-hearted note, but this is a very serious matter. And it was astonishing details. And like you use the word gruesome and some, man, because what I'm hearing is that the unfortunate young lady met a really gruesome death, as you say. Like, you're hearing that she was drugged, beaten up, courtesy of FELIX FELDEJO's fists, tied up with bricks to her side or something like that, thrown off into a ravine or whatever it was, or lagoon. And shot at. You know what I mean? It's highly disturbing, man. Psychopathic. You have to wonder what's going on. I mean, listen, I've got a theory about this, and I think, apart from the obvious, where it looks like he was having an affair with this woman, she's got pregnant, and it would appear that he's tried to convince the lady to have an abortion, and she's refused to. So he's taken matters into his own hand and decided to get rid of her and the baby, and it's disgusting. It really is. You wonder what type of human being, the callousness of it. What type of human being is capable of doing something like that? And the word CTE spring to mind, man, as he's a boxer. I mean, CTE. I mean, I don't know the exact breakdown of the words, but it's basically an acronym for brain damage. And I'm honestly thinking that this guy's brain damaged, man. There's something not right in his head, man. It's got to be, isn't it? Got to be. I mean, that level of callousness and premeditation. It just sickens me that one human being can do this to another human being. It's just behavior that is just off the scale.
It's just so, like, I mean, apparently, obviously he knew the woman, but I think he knew the woman's family. I think that one of his cousins or something might have been. So he's known this woman for a long time. I think they were from school time, I think.
Yeah.
And there are rumors that he was the godfather of one of the cousin's child or something like that. I could be wrong, but there's something. There's a bit more to it than like we know. I think that they're all familiar with each other. Him and that family. It's very, very disturbing, man. Just horrible to read. Just tragic, man. And like it was really. I mean, not only has he, like completely wasted his. I mean, this is all if he gets found guilty, but the details in this. I mean, it's hard to find him not guilty. I mean, it's hard to really see anything other than what I've, than a guilty verdict. But it's very. I can't even put it into words, man. It's just.
Yeah, I'm struggling to come up with words to describe this. Like I said, I use the words callous, gruesome, wicked, evil, and I'm just flabbergasted. And that's why I feel, and listen, this is by no means an excuse, but I'm seriously thinking whether there is a part of the brain, I think it's your frontal lobe or something like that, that is responsible for you making decisions. And I'm kind of in my mind opining that maybe that part of his brain, that frontal lobe, is damaged through the boxing, and his rationale and his way of thinking is just completely skewed. You know what I mean? That's the only way I can rationalize this. That's the only way I can make sense of it, because there is no way to make sense of something like this. That level of violence, that level of premeditation, to me is. You can think of some very wicked killers out there, and I don't even think they would have gone to these lengths. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that suggests to me that there's an element of CTE. And listen, man, CTE is a very serious thing in boxing and in sports. I mean, we've seen in the NFL where football players, some of them have been guilty of some real egregious acts, and they've been diagnosed as having serious CTE problems, you know what I mean? So it's not for the first time, but this is as wicked as it gets, to be honest.
It's terrible, man. Prayers go up for that young lady and her family. Big up Nathan here. He's put, I was thinking CTE myself with the VERDEJO situation. The whole thing is messed up. Yeah. Very messed up, man. Didn't you say, I mean, there was the situation with VERDEJO when we were speaking about it privately. You mentioned to me that obviously, a few years ago, he had that motorcycle accident. He apparently wasn't living the best life outside of the ring even before this whole situation.
I mean, when VERDEJO was signed by Top Rank, he was seen as a genuine future star with lots of potential. I mean, he was a top amateur. Like you said, he went to the Olympics. I think he even had a couple of fights with Lomachenko as an amateur and done well. I don't think he'd beat Lomachenko, but apparently he'd handled himself very well. So going into the professionals, he was seen as a potential future world champion. And he was still a good fighter. I mean, his most recent fight was actually a Fight of the Year candidate when he fought Nakasani, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he got beaten, but it was a very good fight. He was winning. And the Japanese fighter came from behind to stop him late. So VERDEJO was seen as a guy that was going to get to the very top. And indeed, he hadn't done so. And one of the reasons that people were speculating why he hadn't fulfilled his potential was because it was acknowledged even back then is that he had a problem with disciplining himself outside the ring. So I don't know the extent of that, but I did hear stories that, you know what I mean, he wasn't living the best life outside of the ring. And indeed, this mistress or girlfriend or whatever, apparently it wasn't just a casual fling, was it? I'm hearing that he was connected to this girl over a long period, for as long as 11 years, I'm hearing. So quite how he managed to sustain that and be married at the same time is anyone's guess. But hey, man,
Yeah. Big up Conrad in the chat here. He's put big up. What's going on, bro? Hope you're good, man. Good to have you here. My bro DS in the chat. What's happening, man? He's put good point about CTE. I think that's the reasoning they gave to the wrestler Chris Benoit, who killed his family and himself. I remember that story.
It's a very real problem. It's a very real problem. I mean, there are quite a few boxers that down the years. I mean, Carlos Monzon. Some of your viewers might remember him. He threw his girlfriend over a balcony and killed her. You know what I mean? I think it was his wife. But anyway, he threw a woman over the balcony and he killed her. There's been countless stories I've heard of boxers abusing their partners. I mean, even someone like, I'm not sure if a lot of your viewers know, but Arturo Gatti, he was allegedly killed by his partner. But when you do the research on that case, apparently there was long-standing abuse at the hands of Arturo Gatti towards her, which many feel may have led to the situation whereby she killed him in the end for fear of being killed herself.
Edwin Valero.
Sorry?
Edwin Valero.
Edwin Valero, I was going to come on to that. Edwin Valero is a famous one. Yeah, he killed his partner and then killed himself. Yeah, man, there's legions of these cases. And like I said, it's not just boxing. In the NFL, there's been some egregious cases of domestic abuse with CTE being cited as a possible reason. So,
yeah, it's terrible, man. And listen, what Felix Verdejo deserves, I mean, that will be down to the courts, of course. But you know, whatever he gets coming to him, he deserves. Really, I just like, I don't know how you feel, but the human part in me is just like, I wouldn't say I feel sorry for him, but I'm just like, this is just tragedy all around. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've lost a young woman who had everything to live for, expecting a child, and like, you know, her family are going to be devastated. It's a terrible situation. And then also, even on the Verdejo side of things, like, I shouldn't feel sorry for him, but I'm just like, you've just ruined your whole career. You've ruined everything, man. Like, you could have been, I went on his Instagram and had a look, and like, you just would never have guessed. But those are the dangerous people, aren't they? Those are the ones that are dangerous. But
well, that's another reason why I was, you know, citing CTE as a possible reason, because I listened to a podcast of a YouTuber, and he said he'd met Felix Verdejo a couple of times, and he said he came across as one of the nicest people or most humble people that he'd met in boxing. So for him to end up doing something like this, it just goes to show, man, that there were some real demons lurking around in his brain somewhere. And like I said, CTE in combat sports and in sports where, you know, I mean, there's a risk of head injury is very real. I mean, like you quoted, the Chris Benoit case was a very famous one. I've quoted a few famous incidences from boxers, you know what I mean? And so it goes. And there was an MMA fighter. His name escapes my attention now. Yeah, MMA guy was very similar to Chris Benoit. Assaulted his girlfriend very badly. Another one I heard killed his girlfriend, I think. So, unfortunately, man, these things do happen. Yeah, it's tragic all around, man. It's tragic.
It's horrible, man. Let's go to some of the comments here. Ian Hamilton has put, just reading it gave me chills. I've had to wrap myself in this. To think this was supposed to be the next Cotto. The whole thing sounds like someone out of a crime novel, fought with the family. And DS has put here, I was watching the Gatti documentary a few weeks ago. Very dark. Yeah, I've seen that documentary as well. It is dark, man. But listen, man, I hate to start off the show like this, but yeah, it's just really messed up, man. And messed up.
And even going back to that CTE thing, Darryl, I mean, me and you have spoken off the record. I'm not going to name the boxers now, but remember, we had a conversation and I was able to give you the names of about 3 or 4 boxers. I don't think it's appropriate for me to list them now. But I was saying to you that when you see these guys' behavior that they're exhibiting now, and these guys are active fighters, some of them are world champions, and you look at their oddball behavior and the way they rant and shout and swear and stuff like that, you think to yourself, these guys could already be suffering CTE. So it makes you wonder, it makes you fearful of their long-term future. I mean, if they're already exhibiting behavior like this, over aggression, shouting, being, you know what I mean, aggressive unnecessarily, you think to yourself, well, where's that come from? Because you go back a few years, they weren't behaving like this. And like I said, it's a real problem out there, man. and you worry what's going to happen in the future with these guys. You know what I mean? So I'm just putting that out there. But like I said, I don't want to name names because I don't think it's fair to, and I don't think it's appropriate to. But the people watching this will know what I'm talking about. You go out there and look at the videos of some of the fighters out there. I'm not going to call no names. Look at the way they behave. Look at the way they were behaving a few years before that, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Put it like that.
Conrad Boxon has put here, maybe competitive sports are more likely to attract certain types of people compared to normal jobs. He's also put aggressive and narcissistic.
Yep.
Rasta Dad, big up Rasta Dad. He's actually made the show today, man. He's put, I'm early today. He usually catches the last 5 minutes. Good to have you here, man. And Conrad has also put, in CTA could be a trigger by lowering their ability to control their impulsive reactions. Is there a way, before we move on, man, is there a way we can like spot this from early before it's too late? How are we able to pick up on the triggers and try and prevent it? I need to do my research on it a bit more, but how are we able to like try and prevent this?
It's a very difficult one because you could examine someone's brain and it might not appear to be too much damage. Because let's face it, a lot of these fighters, they do get scans from time to time, and they would always pass if they're active boxers. And I think a trigger point as well is when depression sets in or when anger sets in, then it can kick things off, you know? So it's a good point you raised there. How do you stop that? I mean, there was the guy he was an NFL player, wasn't he? There was a documentary. Yeah. And they said that because he killed a couple of people, didn't he? And then he killed himself. He hung himself. And then when they did a post-mortem on his brain, they found that his brain had been severely damaged. So that level of autopsy, obviously, you're not going to be able to perform when somebody's still alive. So it's kind of difficult to capture, you know. But like I said, man, you see certain people and the way they behave, they over aggression, the way they rant, the way they talk.
But this wasn't the case with Felix Verdejo, though. He didn't display that behavior.
No, he didn't. No. But what I'm saying, it could have been the depression arising from the problem that caused him to do this. You know, so. But anyway, you want to look at it, man, it's very tragic and it's a very sad case.
Yeah, it's terrible, man. We'll wait and see how that unfolds. But as of right now, Felix Verdejo has handed himself into the authorities after the body that was located was actually identified as the woman in question. I mean, yeah, very disturbing and very sad situation all around, man. Prayers again go out to the family. And
the authorities have said, by the way, as well, that they're not looking to anybody else in connection with this incident. So I think that pretty much tells you that
the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, some of the things with like the car, like, I mean, some of the stuff that happened, I mean, how did you not even expect to get caught? Like the car was located. I think they had to go through some tolls to actually go to that bridge. So the car was like that car and her car actually went through it. I think he's actually spotted. There's footage of somebody actually like doing the whole thing actually while it's happening. So it's pretty overwhelming. Like, and if they're saying that they're not even looking for anybody else, then it's overwhelming in terms of like the situation, isn't it?
Well, what I'm hearing is that the guy who assisted him, or the person who assisted him, because I don't think there's been a name put out there, but the person who assisted him has started talking and has provided the authorities with all the information they have so far. So they're not looking for anybody else. So it is pretty much him, man. So I guess we'll just have to let the wheels of justice, you know, turn and resolve this one. But hey, man, it would appear that it's definitely him.
It's terrible, man. Let's move on. Rasta Dad has put here, what's the latest with the Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo ring situation? Well, it's funny you asked that because let's get onto the that fight, man. Let's preview this showdown. And like, I reckon this could take up most of the show, man. We're going to talk about it. But the latest, Rasta Dad, before we get into the preview, is that the fight appears to now be on. It appears that the situation has been resolved. Yeah, Canelo came out, I mean, after that interview from Tom Saunders saying that the fight was off. They obviously had the face-off meeting, which Billy Joe Saunders never attended. Canelo was asked about it, and he was quoted as saying that he's not really fussed about the ring. So Billy Joe Saunders kind of ran with that. and was like, okay, well, the fight's on then. Eddie Hearn, do your job, sort of thing. So as of right now, everybody seems to still be there. Everybody seems to be promoting it still. This fight's going to happen, man. Don't get it twisted. This fight will happen. But let's get on to it, man. This fight, this weekend, I've spoken to a lot of people, and, you know, the anticipation for this one is starting to build as we get closer to fight night. Has your anticipation built from this night?
Absolutely. It's gone through the roof. In fact, I would say, listen, if the action inside the ring is anywhere near as entertaining as it's been outside the ring, they're in for one hell of a fight. Because some of the stuff I've seen this week, man, it's just made me just erupt into laughter, because some of the shenanigans, man, I mean, and like I said, Billy Joe Saunders' dad, Tom, has emerged as a real star emanating from this, because some of his interviews, man, have been gold. You know what I mean? They really have. But you know what? I would say that I'm kind of glad a lot of this stuff has happened, because, listen, man, anybody who's been watching these shows over several weeks knows how I feel about Canelo. I've always given him his props as a great, great fighter. And I love watching him fight, and his skill set is pretty much second to none in the game right now. His overall skill set anyway. But there is a certain type of baggage that goes with Canelo. There is a certain diva-ishness that I don't like about the way he conducts his affairs. There is that certain aura around him that kind of makes it hard for me to really warm to Canelo, because as much as I respect him as a fighter, some of the other shenanigans that go around, I'm a lot less in favor of. So to hear Tom Saunders and various members of Billy Joe Saunders' team come out and be quite open about the way they've been treated, or tret, as Tom Saunders likes to say, and some of the other stuff that's emerged, we kind of knew was out there. So, for example, he's talked about the juicy beef, which we all knew about, you know what I mean? He's mentioned that. He's talked about the possibility of loaded hand wraps, which I didn't know about before. But you know what? I'm kind of glad he brought it out in the open, because if these things are going on, then as boxing fans and people who support the game and who watch the game and who pay our money and stuff like that, why shouldn't we be aware of these kind of dark arts that are being practiced, if they are being practiced?
What proof has he got of that, though?
No, he doesn't have any proof as such. But what I'm saying is, if those kind of things do go on in the sport, right, then I think it's right that the fans and the boxing public should know about it. Even if they are rumors, we should know the types of things that go on. And I'm not accusing Canelo and his team of that. I'm just saying, listen, man, if that's the type of thing that's going on around him, then we should know. You know what I mean? And like I said, the Peds thing we knew about anyway. So they're right to raise it. The only problem I've got with someone like, because it's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? You've got someone like Billy Joe Saunders who's kicking up him and his team and making a big fuss about Canelo being a Peds cheat, and he is a Peds cheat, twice convicted Peds cheat. However, a few years ago, Billy Joe Saunders himself got caught up in a Peds scandal, didn't he? With the nasal spray stuff. And some people are suggesting that the nasal spray, or oxylifrene, the substance that was on the banned list that he was accused of taking via the nasal spray, is actually, check this out, it's actually more of a potent ped than clenbuterol is. And that's not to say that he's still taking the nasal sprays as such, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? So, and then you got the ring size. Now, listen, those of us who know boxing well, you, me, a lot of the people who are watching this show, even some that are not, even some of the boxing casuals, will be aware of the dynamics of boxing at that top level. And that's on what we call boxing politics, i.e. the A side and the B side. Now, listen, when you are the A side, as Canelo clearly is in this fight, there are certain advantages that are going to accrue to you. One of those is going to be things like walking to the ring second. And, you know, we saw the fuss we had last week with Derek Chisora and stuff like that. Other things will be like ring size. Now, that was a big subject of debate a few days ago, and, you know, amounted in conjecture, people talking about whether the fight was going to get called off. I never thought for 1 minute the fight would get called off over this. But anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is, The ring size should have been something that was in the contract negotiation. They should have been aware of what the ring size was going to be. Now, at that point in the contract negotiation, that's what you would have expected all this to be resolved. Now, I'm not sure, Daryl, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't get the impression that Billy Joe Saunders is saying that they'd reneged on the contract. He seemed to be suggesting that they wanted a certain size ring, right? And Canelo had gone for, is it a 24-foot ring, where they... No, sorry. He wanted a 24-foot ring, whereas they'd been given an 18 or 20, and they were saying they wouldn't take any less than 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that sorted out at the contract stage?
Yeah, from what I gather, it wasn't originally in the contract. It was left until fight week, and then they basically put their requirements in for what they wanted on fight week, and Canelo's team were like, no, we're going to go for this ring. And they were like, no, we want a 24. I think they wanted a 24-inch originally, knowing that was
ring, yeah.
Knowing that was, you know, over and above what it normally is for a ring size. But I guess that's part of the negotiation tactics. And they were then due to meet in the middle, whereas then Billy Joe Saunders and their team wanted a 22-foot ring. Canelo was like, no, it's 20 foot or nothing. And then they were literally like, well, it's nothing then. And then that was the kind of situation that we got into with this situation here. Let me just go to Lad to comment here. He's put, I'm pretty sure Texas allows 16-foot to 24-foot rings. 20 foot makes the most sense to me and the most fair, as it is right in the middle of what is allowed. So, yeah, I think that I took this more serious than Chisora's case last week about him throwing the fight. We all knew that was rubbish. With this here, I didn't think the fight would get thrown, but part of me was thinking, hold on, they could walk away from this.
No, they were never going to walk.
No, they didn't. Okay.
No, I don't think so. The amount of, listen, we're not being told of what Billy Joe Saunders is getting paid for this fight, but he himself has said this is life-changing money for him and his family. Do you really think that he's going to walk away from life-changing money just because the ring was 2 foot smaller than what he wanted? No, he wasn't. Not only that, not only would he have lost that purse, he would also have been sued and probably would never have fought again. So he's not that silly. A lot of this was mind games going on, I believe. But like I said, Billy Joe Saunders, in fact, has made a big thing about how well managed he is and how the people on his team are so good at, you know what I mean, getting everything sorted. He's referenced Daniel Kinahan. Now, why wasn't this sorted out at the contract stage?
Yeah.
Why did they wait until this week? Because listen, as I've said before, we all know in boxing there's a thing called boxing politics. And part of boxing politics is what we call the boxing A side. So the A side, the more popular fighter, the guy with the belts, is going to get afforded those little things in his favor, those little advantages that you get when you're the champion. So some people from the outside looking in, they think, oh, that's not fair because it was 2 tennis players, you play on a court, and boxing's not quite like that, you know what I mean? So, and this has been from time immemorial, man. This has been going back way, way, way back in time. So it's not going to change for this fight. So it was up to Billy Joe and his team to negotiate those things and try and get some of these things in his favor from the jump, not wait until fight week.
I'll tell you one thing, yeah, about this whole situation, and that is, a lot of people disagree with me here, but I don't mind, you know, like Conrad's put here, could all of this be a move to make Canelo feel a bit uncomfortable and get in his head? What I'll say about this is that whether it is a plan or not, I don't mind seeing a fighter kind of try and do this, because a lot of fighters that fight Canelo recently just seem happy to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was the same situation when Floyd used to fight. Fighters were just happy to be there. At least with Billy Joe Saunders, we're getting a bit of shithousery where he's, you know, trying to get into his head or trying to get him angry. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're maybe, okay, not supposed to be, but at least you're trying to go about it a different route. And you're not kissing his ass and you're not just happy to be there and you're already the loser going in. We want to see you at least go in there and try to win. And from what I'm gathering from Billy Joe Saunders and his team is that they're trying to get in his head. They're trying to do it a different way. And, you know, a lot of people disagree, but I don't mind it. I don't mind seeing it. Like, Canelo is the star. He's the A side. He's the #1 attraction. But at least Billy Joe's doing his own thing. At least he's playing his part of the fight. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'd say.
You know what? I would absolutely agree with you 100%. Like you, I've been very frustrated at some of the opponents that have just come into the ring. They've shown no ambition either before the fight or during the fight or after the fight. We saw that with Avner Yildirim. I have to say there was a little element of that with Callum Smith as well.
There was.
Yeah. It did appear that he was happy to be there. Was he really there to win? Was he really there to push back and show the people that he was there to really try and take those titles from Canelo? Because let's face it, you're going to have to rip those titles from Canelo's head. You know what I mean? You're not going to get any favors. We know that. And Billy Joe knows that as well. So that's why when they were making a big fuss about the judge, I was on his side about that because, listen, man, the judges are going to be very important. We've all heard the stories, man. We've all seen it before. You fight Canelo, you are literally 4 rounds down from the jump. That's one of the problems I've got with Canelo. Even when he fought Floyd and he got his ears absolutely boxed off, can you believe it that one of the judges scored it a draw? When in reality, Canelo lost nearly every round of that fight. We've seen it in the 2 Golovkin fights, both controversial. I thought he lost the first fight against Golovkin. I thought he won the second one, but they were both close. But guess what? Canelo gets a decision. We've seen that with Erislandy Lara. Loads of people thought that Canelo lost that fight. I actually didn't have a problem with him winning that fight because I thought Lara did a bit too much running in that fight to be adjudged the winner. But, you know, a lot of you see where I'm going with this. There's been lots of times when he's been in fights and the scoring's been ridiculous. You know what I mean? So, and then we've seen Canelo do things like even select his opponents, you know what I mean, against the wishes of the sanctioning bodies. We've seen Canelo shortchange fighters like Callum Smith and Avner Yildirim, whereby they get the call to fight him 2 months before when he's already been in training, preparing for the fight, and they get the call 2 months before, if that, and say, yeah, you're fighting, do you want to fight Canelo on such and such a date? And because they've been so thirsty for the money, they've said, yeah. You know what I mean? When in reality, you know what I mean, they should have been more reticent. I mean, again, and that's what Billy Joe Saunders spoken about this in the past, that he offered to fight Canelo before, but it was a short notice offer and he wasn't going to be done like that. So yeah, man, I mean, there's lots of things that I could bring up here that, again, it goes back to the diva-ish mentality around Canelo that Billy Joe Saunders and his team have been pushing back against. And am I admiring him for that, to be honest?
Yeah. Ian Hamilton says here, there's a lot of intrigue for this fight. I've been trying to look at what Saunders does well, but then thought Canelo does even better stuff. Saunders needs to be absolutely switched on for this. Rasta Dad has put, exactly, Laurie. If the ring size was so important, it should have been sorted before the contracts were signed. Conrad has put here, and he also puts the pressure on the judges. Lad has put here, do you think Canelo has some direct contact to the judges, or is it just because it's Canelo? No, I just think it's because it's Canelo, for me. Keys to victory. Let's talk about it, man, because I know, but when this fight got signed, you was one of the people that wasn't too, you know, pumped up about this fight. There were better opponents out there for you that you would have liked to have seen Canelo take on instead of Billy Joe Saunders. But the fight's here now. You know, how does Billy, let's talk about the keys to victory. For Billy Joe Saunders, I think it's quite obvious what he needs to do, but it's going to be a lot harder than us just saying it, isn't it?
Well, this is why Billy Joe Saunders and his team were right. I mean, they left a bit late, in my opinion, but they were right to insist upon operating in a larger size ring, because obviously if the ring is smaller, it makes Canelo easier to shut the distance down on him and to engage more. So the keys to victory is going to be his southpaw style and the movement. And they would have looked at the Erislandy Lara fight and seen that in that fight, Erislandy Lara, who's also an accomplished southpaw with very good movement, better movement than Billy Joe, I have to say. But yeah, he was able to cause Canelo a lot of problems by his movement and his boxing. So that is, I would imagine, the game plan that Billy Joe Saunders will look to implement. And listen, you're not going to be able to run away from Canelo for 12 rounds. So there are going to have to be times in that fight when he does have to hold his feet and engage. But Billy Joe Saunders has got very good chin. He's a very tough guy. And so they will be hoping that in the times when he does engage, he will do it in a way that he can do so and get out of harm's way, or, you know, put up a defense that will minimize the amount of times he gets hit. But like you said, Daryl, it's easier said than done because Canelo's improved a lot since he fought Lara, and he's fought guys that can move. And you've seen what he does to arms, man. You saw when Callum Smith put the earmuffs up like that, and Canelo just punched through those arms, and you saw that grotesque swelling on Callum Smith's left arm, man. You thought, wow. And I would imagine you're going to see a lot of that in this fight too. In terms of the fight itself, man, I still can't see past Canelo winning. Because like I said, at the time when we talked about this fight months ago, I said I cannot see Billy Joe Saunders getting a decision against Canelo. This fight is taking place in Texas. It might as well be Mexico. Yeah. It's going to be in front of 70,000 people, which is another bone of contention that Billy Joe Saunders had, because according to him, he said that when they first discussed the fight, there was only going to be a few thousand in the arena. Now it looks like there's going to be 70,000 rabid Mexicans. And you can imagine every time Canelo even lands a half shot or just lands on the shoulder or whatever, wherever he lands, there's going to be big cheers going up. So in that type of environment, I don't give Billy Joe Saunders a chance of winning. And I have to be honest and also say, man, that even without that, to me, Canelo, his skill set right now and the form he's got going into this fight, I really don't see Billy Joe standing much of a chance of winning. I'll think it's a victory if he even goes 12 rounds.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I mean, a lot of people are saying, yeah, he needs to box more, and it's true, he does need to do that, but Canelo has improved significantly. He knows how to cut the ring off now. You know, he punches with authority, and I think that what he's going to try and do here or do is break Billy Joe down. I think I could see this fight going in this sort of direction. I could see it being a scenario where first couple of rounds, Billy Joe gets off to a decent start, pops off the jab on the back foot, sharp as a razor. I think he will be in the first few rounds, where I'll probably be getting a few texts from people saying, rah, Billy Joe might do this, you know? And then all of a sudden, we get into middle rounds, 6, 7, 8. Canelo's working the body, starting to hit that, grind that down. And then the later it gets, the more punishing it gets. The crowd will be on top of you. 70,000 basically Mexican fans there. Santo de Mayo weekend, you know. It's going to be really, there's going to be a real pressure cooker in there. And I'm not saying that Billy Joe hasn't got the stomach for it, but I just think it's going to be overwhelming at times, man. And I think Canelo will punch his way onto a win.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what the thing is as well, to be fair to Billy Joe Saunders, I honestly couldn't tell you how good he really is, because listen, man, you have to go back about 3 or 4 years to last see a fight where Billy Joe Saunders truly impressed. And even in that one, he won at a canter against David Lemieux. But then the problem with that fight was afterwards, we found out about the oxaliprine and the nasal spray stuff. People were expecting Lemieux, myself included, to give Billy Joe Saunders a real rough ride. In fact, a lot of people predicted that he was going to knock Billy Joe out.
Yep, I remember.
And to be fair to Billy Joe, man, he absolutely boxed his ears off that night and looked sensational. But I have to say, both before and after that, I haven't seen anywhere near that level of performance from Billy Joe Saunders. And in fact, I'm struggling to see a performance from him, apart from that Lemieux night, that would give me confidence in picking him over Canelo. Can you? I mean, he looked decent against Chris Eubank Jr., although that was a very close fight. To me, that could have gone either way. I think maybe a draw was probably the fairest decision for that fight, because Billy Joe won the first 5 or 6 rounds and Eubank won the last 5 or 6 rounds. So that was very close. Andy Lee, he won the title, he looked good, Andy Lee, but then he never sustained it, did he? He got off to a great start, he dropped Andy Lee, he looked good, and then he tired down the stretch in that one too. There wasn't a lot going on. Andy Lee wasn't really able to take advantage of the fact that Billy Joe didn't finish that fight too good. And a lot of the good early work he'd done dissipated as the fight went on. And I'm looking at some of his performances after that. They've not been impressive. So as much, you know what, I would actually like to see him win, but when I analyze his performances and the way he's looked recently, I can't make a case for him winning this fight. And even if he was to win the fight, he's never struck me as a puncher. And Canelo's got a great chin. I mean, you know, Have you ever even seen Canelo hurt? I mean, I know he got wobbled many years ago when he fought Miguel Cotto's brother, but I think he was about
a teenager then.
Yeah, I think he was about 18 when that happened. But I mean, he's been in with some big punchers. Triple G, Danny Jacobs, Miguel Cotto, people like that. Shane Mosley. No one's put a dent on him. You know what I mean? So do we really think that Billy Joe is? I just can't see it, bro. I just can't see how he wins. And then even if he boxes the night of his life, is he going to get any love on the scorecards? Probably not. I would say no. So how does he win?
So a lot of comments here. Let me go to them, man. Conrad has put here, I think we'll see a competitive fight for the first 5 or 6 rounds, but something about Billy Joe Saunders tells me he won't just accept the defeat and he'll still try. Yeah, I think with Callum Smith's, I don't want to be rude, but Callum Smith, for me, kind of just accepted the outcome and just wanted to go the distance. I think there's something in Billy Joe where he won't just stand there and allow it. He'll do his best. I think he'll put in an effort.
When Conrad says there he won't just accept defeat and he'll still try something, does he mean that he'll go above and beyond? Or will he do something like try and headbutt Canelo, or will he end up getting thrown out of there? What does he mean? Foul play or what?
He's probably referencing the Callum Smith fight, where it looked like for a long time that Callum Smith was just happy to go the distance after the pattern of how the fight was going. Whereas, like, I think Billy Joe, I'm not saying Callum Smith don't have heart, but I just don't think Billy Joe will go out like that, man. And one thing that you said as well, I think that, I know his performances hasn't been impressive, but I think he'll raise the level accordingly. And I think that he knows how big this is. You look at the shape that he's in, man. He's been in fantastic shape throughout. And, I'm not saying it's going to be enough to win, but I think he will, do his best. Let me quickly go through these, Laurie, before I go back to you. Jamie Payne has put here, you're spot on with that, and he'll probably stop him late. Lad has put here, I've got Canelo round 9, round 10. DS has put here, I've got Canelo winning comfortably on points, but wouldn't be surprised to see a stoppage between 8 and 10. And he's also said here, I would have given Billy Joe Saunders a better chance at 160. I've not been impressed with him at all at 168, and a few people agree with him there. Kai Sinclair has put Canelo will win by KO. Nathan has put here, he often fades in fights. Georgia said here, I'd give him a better chance at 160. So, yeah, have to agree. At 168, he hasn't looked impressive at all for me. At 160, he has, but not at 168.
Yeah. I mean, Billy Joe has said, and I guess there is a certain amount of truth to it, that he tends to fight down or up to the level of his opponents. However, even when he's fought up to the level of opponents, I still don't see enough there for me to believe that he's going to surpass the challenge that's in front of him on Saturday, because this is an enormous challenge. Let's not make no mistake, man. He's up against it. He's up against pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world, certainly in terms of skill sets, because I've said on the record before, and I don't mind repeating it now, I've got Crawford as my number 1. But there are reasons for that as well. But what you can't argue with is that Canelo definitely has pound for pound skill sets. He's also a very big puncher. He's also very strong for the weight. He's also more mobile than a lot of people give him credit for. He's improved a lot, man. He's one of the most improved fighters out there. Trust me. You look at his fights now to a few years back, and you can see the tangible improvements he's made on his game. He's in a rich vein of form. He's riding high. And I'm, unless he's underestimating Billy Joe, I can't see how Billy Joe can outbox him for 12 rounds. I can see Billy Joe winning some rounds and making a good start. And I'm sure Billy Joe, he will turn up there and give off his best. I've got no doubts about that. But the reality is somewhat different. I just can't see him winning, man.
I think he's got a wire in his back now, man. He's wound up this whole ring situation. I don't know if you saw the footage yesterday when he was walking back from the face-off. The supposed face-off. Billy Joe Saunders wasn't there. But when he was walking through the lobby, his team were there. And, he really, he was calling them pussies and, all of that. There was a confrontation there. Big up my bro, Stefan, man. He's put in here, what did you make of Canelo's comments on the Last Stand podcast? He seemed to entertain everyone apart from Andrade. Did you see those comments?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that, man? Because he literally said, yeah, I might fight him. Charlo, yeah, I could fight him. Who else was there? Caleb Plant, yeah. Benavidez, yeah. Andrade, no chance. What was your thoughts on that, man?
Again, it's the diva in him coming out. He wants to fight people that he wants to fight. Not that's what's necessitated by the sanctioning bodies. And let's face it, the sanctioning bodies are going to fall into line with anything he said. I mean, even going back to the PED issue, that from my understanding is that what they've done, the WBC, is up the levels of clenbuterol so that he won't fail any future drug tests. Now, who else are they doing this for, man? You know what I mean? Like, you know, it just makes you just question that whole aura around this guy. You know, he just seems to be able to do what he wants. So in some ways, a Billy Joe Saunders win would be doing boxing a big favor on Saturday. Believe it or not, it would. But then having said that, they would probably just bestow all that onto the next so-called superstar. So boxing can be like that, man. You know what I mean? Boxing is a very political sport.
What's your thoughts about Andrade? Because I'm thinking, like, it's not like Andrade is the most intimidating out of all of those names. He's probably, out of all those names that were mentioned, Charlo, Benavidez, Caleb Plant, it was only Andrade where he was just like, nah, I'm not interested in that. It's a bit of
I can only think there is that he feels that his style matches up with Andrade the least than it does with the other guys. That's the only thing I can make of that. Unless there's some kind of personal enmity or dislike, I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so.
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
Yeah, so it must be a styles matchup thing. Because let's face so for example, someone like Charlo, he's not a noted mover, is he? He has decent footwork, but he's not a mover.
Yeah, but
so he's more likely to stand and engage.
Yeah, but Caleb Plant is.
And Caleb Plant as well. He's a mover, but he will stand in the pocket and trade when he has to. Bit like Billy Joe does. Andrade, maybe Canelo just sees him as an eternal mover and very awkward, and a style that would probably make him look bad. That's probably why he's not. Listen, it's definitely because it's not because he's scared of Andrade, put it that way. Because, I mean, listen, man, why would he be scared of Andrade? He's seen Andrade in his last fight. He went life and death with Liam Williams, who I've got a lot of respect for. But let's be honest, man, he's not on the same level as Canelo. So that's another reason why Canelo's probably dismissing that fight, thinking, why go there when I know I'm going to beat this guy fairly easy anyway? So,
yeah. All right, let me get your final prediction. The people in the comments have made theirs. Let me get your final prediction, and also tell me, what does Canelo have to do to get you to be, you know, full? I know you're on board, but what does he have to do for you where you'll be like, you know what, I'm happy with that fight. I've got no issues there. Fair play to Canelo, because we know what's likely to be the next fight should he win. But what would you like to see him do? Give me that and your prediction first of all.
My prediction is what I said earlier. I'm going for a Canelo win, a resounding win. I don't think it will be close. I think that
not even early.
I think that Billy Joe might win a couple rounds, but I think that sooner or later Canelo will make the adjustments. He's a quality fighter. He will close the distance. He'll start to land the shots, and he'll just have too much for Billy Joe. I think. Let's be honest, man. Canelo, despite what I say about him, he's a special fighter. And I think the special fighter will emerge victorious. I expect Billy Joe to give over his best, but I'll be honest with you, man. I'll be surprised if he's still there at the end of 12. If he goes 12, that in itself is a victory for me.
Okay. And what would you like to see next for Canelo after this? Should he win?
Well, listen, I'm happy to see him try to unify the fight. I think Caleb Plant is a very worthy challenger. And like Billy Joe, he'll be coming here to win. I mean, Caleb Plant has said on the record previously that Canelo tried to throw him a bone and let him take a short notice fight. Some people criticized Caleb Plant for not taking that fight. I was with him. Why do that, man? No. You know what I mean? Fight fair. Give the man enough notice, enough time to prepare, and let him come into that ring confident that he's in a position to give his best. So I don't blame him for not taking the fight earlier. But yeah, listen, man, Canelo said he wants to unify, that he wants to clean up. So listen, man, I'm an advocate for cleaning out divisions. That's why Terence Crawford is my number one, because he cleaned out the light welterweight division before stepping up to welterweight. Crawford has made serious attempts to try and clean out the welterweight division. It's not his fault that people like Little Errol don't want to engage. So yeah, man. So yeah, I'll be happy for him to fight Caleb Plant next.
Okay, because I remember saying this to you earlier on in the year, that this was the direction he was going in. You seem a lot more okay with it now. Then
No,
he
I
was
was
back
never
there.
against the Caleb Plant fight. If you remember, I said back at the time, Caleb Plant would be. In fact, I remember saying to you quite clearly that I think Caleb Plant would represent a more stiffer test for him than Billy Joe Saunders would. I did say that. The problem I had was the Abner Yildirim fight and the way that whole fight was made, where Canelo just basically said to the WBC, install Abner Yildirim as my mandatory so I can fight him, which they duly did. And that's one of the shocking things about Canelo's aura, that he can go up to a sanctioning body and demand that they do that, and then they do it. I was also critical of him that previously he'd said about not wanting to fight Mexican fighters, and he'd only expressed an interest in cleaning out the division when David Benavidez had been stripped of his belt. So those were the criticisms I had with him. But it is what it is. And if he says he's going to clean out the division, then I'm happy to go with that for now. And we'll see how it transpires. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the fight this weekend, man. Trust me, I'm looking forward to it. And I think that, yeah, a lot of casuals that I've spoken to are really into this as well. Obviously, they know who Billy Joe Saunders is. He's from the UK. Last thing I'll say before we come off this topic is that normally in these sort of fights, man, you know, you get the UK fighter. A lot of people from the UK will be like, I'm backing the Brit, man. I'm going for him. There's a lot of people on Twitter and online and elsewhere that are just like, they don't like Billy Joe. They're just like, I want Canelo to do this. Normally we back the Brit. I'm not backing him. What's your thoughts on that? Does that surprise you at all or no?
It does surprise me in a way, but listen, we're dealing with the Canelo phenomenon. There's Canelo's got a lot of love out there from fight fans. He seems to be able to do what he wants and still get the love. But hey, that's another matter. I think as well, it's fair to say that Billy Joe Saunders hasn't always conducted himself in the best of lights. Let's be honest. Some of the things he's got up to outside of the ring, he hasn't curried favor with people, and I can understand that. And even the way he's conducted himself in this fight, refusing to do the press, making some of these more lurid accusations and talking about not engaging, walking away from the fight and stuff like that. I think maybe some fight fans are a bit fed up with him and just want to see him beaten and got rid of, you know what I mean? So it could be a bit of that. I am a little surprised, though, that so many people, what you're suggesting, are talking about him in that way. But
just from what
maybe that's the reasons. I mean, listen, I have actually met Billy Joe Saunders a couple of times, and I've always found him to be an okay guy. I've actually met his dad too, by the way, when I met him. And he never showed me that side of him that I've seen now. But hey, yeah. So listen, man, I would like him to win. I've got my own reasons in wanting him to win. I actually think it might be a good thing for boxing because, listen, someone's going to have to beat Canelo one day. He's already been beaten, by the way, by Floyd. But listen, a lot of the stuff, I've said it before and I'll say it again without any hesitation. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the baggage, a lot of what goes on around Canelo, I think is very bad for the game. And maybe if he was beaten and humbled, it might.
I think even with some
people it might force some people to reappraise what's going on in boxing.
Even with that though, people won't want Billy Joe to be the guy to do it.
Yeah, possibly. But I'm speaking from my own perspective. I just think that if Billy Joe Saunders was to pull off what would be, let's face it, a massive upset, then it might force some people who are sort of on the Canelo train to just reappraise and to take a step back and say, were we always doing the right thing? You know what I mean? Were we doing the right thing for boxing with the way we used to just laud this guy and put him on a pedestal and let him get away with virtually anything? I think that side of things has been bad for the sport. But is Billy Joe the man to do it? Unfortunately not.
Lad has put here, hopefully we get the Joshua Fury announcement at the fight as well on Saturday. Bro, I hope so. I mean, it needs to be a joint announcement for one, but Fury will be there. Fury's going to be there. Eddie Hearn will be there. You know, it's the perfect time to do it, really, because you've got a large UK audience watching. You've got America watching. You've got Mexico watching. I'd love that to be the case. And I think it really needs to happen very soon. Otherwise, we can just start forgetting about this fight.
You know what? I'm going to say something kind of controversial now. You know what? I'm already losing interest with this stuff going on around this fight because it's been so long now.
Yeah.
And we've not heard nothing. And if anything, the longer this goes on, the more it would appear that it's not going to happen anytime soon. So, yeah, listen, if we hear an announcement on Saturday, then great. But
we don't get an announcement this week. If we don't get it this week, man, this weekend, I don't know anymore, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've spoken to quite a few people in recent weeks, and they're like me. They're getting to the stage where, like, it's almost like, do I even care anymore? You know what I mean? Because let's face it, there are other fights out there, man. I mean, listen, the Fury Joshua would be a great fight, but then, you know what I mean? He's not, Joshua and Fury, not the only heavyweights out there. I mean, there's Wilder's looking for a third fight, apparently. There's other fighters on the horizon who want their chance. And boxing will go on, whether that fight happens or not. So, like you said, they need to make an announcement soon. Otherwise, I think there will be a real level of apathy that they will find hard to surpass. You know what I mean? Because it's a bit like what happened with Kell Brook and Amir Khan. All of a sudden now, Amir Khan's talking like he wants to fight, but there's been a collective stick your finger up at him. You know what I mean? People said, "Oh, go away, Amir." You know what I mean? Because when you should have made that fight, you didn't want it.
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't happen with Joshua Fury, but you know what I mean? A lot of people I've spoken to, man, are just getting tired of the nonsense.
Yeah. And a few people here in the comments are agreeing, man. Ian Hamilton said here, Eddie said this week, it's this week or bust, so let's see. You know me, I've believed from day one that it happens. Yeah, but when? You know,
it should happen. It should happen. And we wanted it to happen badly. But, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, man, I think people are getting exasperated and frustrated and everything else. And if we don't make an announcement soon, like I said, it's going to get to the level where people are going to say, listen, so what? Move on. Yeah. Bit like the Terence Crawford, Errol Spence. Remember one time everyone was mad about that. Now when you mention it, everyone shrugs his shoulders and say, oh, whatever. Let's see Ortiz versus Crawford or Ortiz versus Spence. You know what I mean? Or Jerome Ennis. That's the way boxing and indeed sport works. You know what I mean? There'll always be that next guy. So if it doesn't happen, then hey, man, you know what I mean? I won't lose no sleep over it, to be honest. And I don't think you will either.
No. Let's I want to go on to talk about the weekend's action. Good preview there for the show. Nathan's put here, Liam Smith is fighting on Friday against Magomed Kabanov. Good fight. Yeah, I'm aware of that as well. This Friday, Liam Smith kind of fallen under the radar, but yeah, he'll be fighting in Russia against Kabanov there. Let me
good luck to Liam Smith. That's a hard fight. I've looked up Kabanov's record. He's a good fighter, and
he's going to Russia as well.
Going out all the way out there. I can only imagine he's getting paid very well. But again, like Billy Joe Saunders, I don't see him getting any love on the scorecard. So unless he's going to get Kabanov out of there, which looking at Kabanov's record, that's unlikely, then I don't know, man. But listen, I wish him all the best anyway. Fair play to him for taking the fight.
Yeah. I want to get on to last weekend's. I know we for those of you that missed it, we did a live show after the Chisora Parker card. We gave a thorough breakdown of our thoughts on that particular show. So if you guys have missed it, then go and check that out. The video's out there on my channel under live streams on the YouTube tab. So I'm not going to go into that again on this show. I want to talk about Andy Ruiz though, because we never really got that fight, hadn't happened yet. And obviously it's happened now. Andy Ruiz winning on points against Chris Arreola. I was shocked during this fight. I'm not going to lie, man. I was shocked. First of all, at the knockdown in the second round, and the fact that Chris Arreola put up a much better effort than I thought he would do. And Andy Ruiz, he was a deserved winner of that fight. But I'm not going to lie, man. I was a bit shocked at times, man. I'm not going to say it was the worst performance from him. It's his first fight under Eddie Reynoso. They're going to be working on a few things. It's not going to flow immediately. He's also getting used to the new way. But I don't know. I just thought that he would dispose of him, but he didn't. Arreola put up a much better performance than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was Arreola really good, or was Andy Ruiz poor? What was it? Or was it in the middle?
Well, you know what? He put me on the spot with that one. I mean, first thing I want to say is that fight and the result made a total arsehole of me in my prediction, because if you remember, I'd said that I didn't expect that fight to go any further than 6-7 rounds. Yeah. And I stayed up to watch it. And when I saw him hit the deck like that, I was like, rah, this could be an upset of magnanimous proportions. But you know what? And then I think I should add as well that he wasn't just a knockdown. He was hurt a few times after that as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was hurt a couple of times in that fight. It wasn't the best of performances. To be fair to him, he got off to a very rocky start, but he did come through, and I think he did do more than enough to win the fight in the end, although one of the scorecards in that fight was ridiculous. But it was competitive, a lot more competitive than I'd predicted, and I was shocked to see him go down. He did win the fight in the end, but he did come across as pretty predictable in that fight. I mean, he tended to throw the 1, 2, 3 all night long, didn't he? And you could see that Arreola was timing it, you know what I mean? And he was also, when Arreola was persisting with the jab, he was getting a lot of success out of it. So it wasn't a very impressive performance, to be honest, if I'm going to be honest. He did win the fight. He did enough to win, but he didn't impress me much. And I guess some of the other heavyweights looking at that will be thinking, listen, man, I wouldn't mind that fight next. You know what I mean? I mean, Luis Ortiz is apparently, he said he'd fight him. There's talks of Wilder and Ruiz. Now, Wilder didn't call him out, but there's been talks that fight could be named. I wouldn't mind seeing that. To me, that is a very 50-50 fight because, like you said, Ruiz, he's gone with the Reynosos, and it was his first fight with him. He lost a bit of weight. Maybe that might have affected his punch resistance. I don't know. So maybe they've still got to find his optimum weight. So that might take some time. But yeah, man, why not?
Yeah, Stefan said here, everyone's going to be telling Ruiz to put the weight back on. And Conrad said he was quite easy to hit.
He was.
First fight under Eddie Reynoso. Can we give him a bit of a pass or no? Because it's Chris Arreola, 40 years old, way out of his prime. He should have disposed of him anyway.
A bit of both, really. I am going to cut him a bit of slack because, for those reasons you said, it was his first fight with the Reynosos. He'd lost a significant amount of weight. We don't know how that would have affected him in the ring. We don't know how much that would have affected his punch resistance. Because previous to that, Andy Ruiz seems to have had a good chin. He was dropped by AJ, but that was a hell of a left hook that he took there. That would have dropped most people. But in terms of the actual boxing, I have to say I wasn't that impressed. And he came across as quite predictable and open to being hit, like one of your previous contributors there said. So, yeah, man, listen, if you're another one of the top heavyweights out there and you see that, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, man, I wouldn't mind that fight at all.
What did you think of Sonny Edwards against Matalani last week?
Yeah, we previewed this fight last week, and I said that I thought Sonny Edwards would win. It was on paper anyway, it was supposed to be a stiff test to him, but he pretty won most of the rounds, didn't he? His boxing was superb on the night.
What size was that ring? Victory. I wonder what size that ring was. I know they're little men. But, you know, he needed a big ring to operate, man. I mean, he was on his bike, but he was very good at doing it.
Or maybe Matalani should have insisted on a phone booth and even in a phone booth, I'm not so sure if he'd have won. Because even when he did close the distance and start landing punches, man, Sonny Edwards seemed to have an answer for everything he did. So, yeah, deserved winner. He boxed really well. And let's see what he goes on to do from here on in. He's going to be very difficult to beat, Sonny Edwards, because his boxing attributes and his ring IQ are very high. So yeah, he's. I would imagine he's going to make a few defenses of that title. Probably end up moving up in weight. He does look good.
Sharper Sounds has put here, big up guys. The Ruiz fight was a great watch, entertaining fight. I think that he had an average performance. However, it looks like he's dropped a lot of weight. I'd like to see how he looks in the future. You agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. It was an entertaining fight. It was an average or subpar performance. Like I said, the weight could have been an issue because he's got to get used to fighting at that weight. And B, like I said, you never know about the punch resistance until you're actually hit. The one thing I would say, though, if you're getting dropped and hurt by Arreola, can you imagine if that would have been Deontay Wilder landing those bombs? What would have happened then?
Yeah.
So, or even Luis Ortiz, who's a big puncher. But either of those fights, the Wilder one or the Ortiz fights, are very entertaining, very watchable fights. So I hope they can be made in the near future.
For sure, man. Listen, we're going to wrap it up today because, you know, like we've passed the hour mark. Going to wrap up a little bit earlier than normal. I know we tend to go on for an hour 20, hour 25, but your last thoughts on the big one this weekend, man. Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez. Final thoughts before we lock off, man. You looking forward to this?
I am. I've got to say, listen, back when this fight was first touted and when it was first made, I wasn't that sold on it because I just didn't think it would be that competitive. But I couldn't have foreseen, the build up to this fight. I never thought anything like this would happen. And I've been thoroughly entertained by the build up. And as I said before, if the fight is anywhere near as good or eventful as the build up has been, we should be in for one hell of a night. I'm hoping Billy Joe Saunders can do it. I would actually personally like him to see him win for a few reasons, which I've stated. I'm not going to go back into it. But unfortunately for Billy Joe, I think he's going to be the UK Slayer's 7th victim. And I fully expect Canelo to win. But I am going to be watching it. And I will be supporting Billy Joe, man, to be honest. I hope he does win.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the fight card, man? Let me see the actual card. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen because we've just spoken about the main event. But the actual card, do you know who's on the card? I mean, there's a good fight between Kieran Conway and Sissoko, isn't there? But otherwise, I mean, who else is on this show? Let me get the card up, man, before we go. I know, sorry, guys. I said I was going to wrap it up, but let me quickly see if I can get this card up.
I haven't heard of any fight that particularly stands out. But then what tends to happen with a lot of these big fights is you get the big fight, everyone's talking about the big fight, and that's it. So, yeah.
They ain't even got the card on there. I can't even find it anyway. But yeah, I think it's all about the main event, isn't it, really, to be honest, man? It's all about the main event. 100%.
100%.
Well, listen, guys, man, we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you to everybody who tuned in on the comments. As always, before you go, if you haven't already, hit that like button. It's important. We need to try and get as much interaction as we can. Share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll be going on live again on Saturday, well, I should say Sunday morning. It'll be like 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning or something, whenever that fight finishes. But I'll be going on there to get you guys' reaction to the fight. So make sure you guys tune into that. And in the meantime, man, have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day. And look forward to seeing you all after the fight.